My name is Professor Otto Cars from Uppsala University in Sweden. I'd like to share with you today my concern about the crisis of antibiotic resistance and the weak response from the world on this threat. Bacteria, we have them around us and we have them in our bodies and in the environment. Bacteria are many. They are experts in evolution, they're experts in adaptation. So when they are threatened by an antibiotic, they will come up with a defense. They become resistant. And many of the bacteria today in the world that causes disease are resistant or multi-resistant to most of the antibiotics that we have in our arsenal. You can describe the crisis of antibiotics and the causes in this way. First, there is a massive use and misuse of antibiotics in the world, which drives resistance. Secondly, there is spread of this resistant bacteria in healthcare, in the community, in livestock production, by trade and travel, and facilitated by poor infection control, poor sanitation and hygiene. Thirdly, there is a huge lack of new antibiotics in the pipeline. And fourthly, there is lack of precise diagnostics that will help the prescriber to identify the patients that really need an antibiotic. All these causes contributes to the problem we have today. So, first, the use of antibiotics. It's uncontrolled in many parts of the world. There is over-the-counter sales. There are drug sellers. We have a lot of antibiotic use in livestock production, which is not necessary. Also, in the rich countries, in the high-income countries, there is a demand for antibiotics, and there are financial incentives inbuilt in this. So how did we end up here? Why the global complacency? Well, first of all, antibiotic resistance undermines diseases treatment. It's not a disease in itself. It's not like HIV, tuberculosis, and malaria. There is no good measurements of the global antibiotic use, nor resistance levels, and primarily not the economic consequences for health and healthcare or society. So we don't have the right picture of the problem. But I think primarily the driver has been that we have been fooled into self-deception, that there will always be a new antibiotic around when the old one has been worn out by resistance. And this is in fact the circle that we have been moving in for 70 years now. New antibiotics has come, they've been misused and overconsumed, which has led to resistance, then there was a new one again. But this circle is of course not the way that we should deal with this problem. It's not sustainable, it drives resistance, and we need to find a new model. And to prove that this model is not working, we can show the next slide here, which shows that there was a long time when new antibiotics were coming out of the pharmaceutical industry's pipeline until 1987, when the last antibiotic class was in fact discovered. So there's a huge time now with a huge discovery void, an empty space, where we don't have any new antibiotics in the pipeline, and where the innovative capacity both in academic sector and in the pharmaceutical industry is really low, very critically low. So we simply need to find a new system for innovation of new antibiotics, but also combine with that a system for the rational use, the controlled distribution, to safeguard these antibiotics for the future. Now what has happened today, and is happening now in the world, is that modern medicine is at stake. We cannot do the procedures in modern medicine which we are used to unless we have access to effective antibiotics. That's a fact. But primarily, the burden of antibiotic resistance falls on the developing countries, the low and middle income countries. Because there is such a huge burden of disease, of infectious diseases in these countries already, which are competing. There is poor sanitation and hygiene. Also, there is uncontrolled excess of drugs, which paves the way for resistance. At the same time, there is lack of access in many parts. So that balance is really a critical issue to deal with in those contexts. And of course, availability and affordability is a key issue. New antibiotics simply need to be delivered to all the world as part of the right to health. Disturbing figure here is that already in 2005, experts warned and described that 70% of children with neonatal infections could not be treated by the drugs that was recommended by the WHO. And the situation has definitely not gone better since then. In summary, what we see today is a threat to the treatment of many infectious diseases, many common infectious diseases in the world, like pneumonia, gonorrhea, typhoid fever, and so on, but also to procedures in health, like care of preterm babies, safe child deliverables, cancer treatment, transplantations. So it's not only individuals, it's also the system at stake. We need to put this problem into a health system's perspective. If we look here, we have the 6 WHO building blocks in a health system. In all these boxes, we can place antibiotic resistance. This has not been done, but we need to put it in this system's perspective. Because if we look upon this, you can see that antibiotic resistance needs to be dealt with from a perspective of service delivery, of information, of financing, and so on. Now, it's not only a health problem, it's far beyond that. The World Economic Forum has raised this issue significantly in their global risks report in this year and the previous year. And this picture here could describe what is sort of at stake. It's not only health services, it's really productivity, labor supply, tax revenues, unemployment. It's beyond health, it really also gets into the real GDP. Another aspect of this is, what about the Millennium Development Goals? I think if you look at on the 8 goals, you can place access to antibiotics, antibiotic resistance in all these boxes. Of course, primarily in the health-related goals, where it's really critical, those goals cannot be fulfilled without access to antibiotics. So, to sum up this short presentation, I would say that we have missed this problem. We have overconsumed a global resource. There's been lack of public policy and global governance, and it's now very late, but it is our collective responsibility to take action. And I will end with this quote from the World Economic Forum report, which stands for itself. Thank you very much for listening.